use better judgment in, not having things escalate into this tragic, tragic situation.
It sounds like you're blaming him for his own death again.
In this video, Channel 4's Anya Parampil confronts a Trump spokesperson about the death of an ICU nurse at the hands of ICE. Watch how quickly this spokesperson pivots from calling it a tragedy to claiming the victim is responsible for his own shooting. This is a masterclass in victim blaming. Let's watch this together.
Joining me now is Jennifer Ewing, who is a spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK. Jennifer, in less than 3 weeks, 2 Americans have been killed by ICE agents. Both were blamed by members of your party for their own deaths. Can you give me your reaction to that, firstly?
Yeah, I think what has been the problem, quite frankly, and the numbers show it, is that the local and state authorities have not been working with the ICE agents. And when that happens, unfortunately, things like we saw with Mr. Pretti's death a few days ago, which of course is tragic, is that there aren't proper parameters and safety measures put in for people who have the right to peacefully protest. And instead what happens is the ICE agents who are trying to obtain and basically arrest illegal criminals are clashing with the protest. And then because so many people are armed in America, it escalates from there. Again, it was a tragedy. And I think that the good news is overnight you will have seen that the governor, Tim Walz, and President Trump have had a discussion. So hopefully the state and local authorities will cooperate with the federal agents, which has happened in almost every other county in America. That's why Minnesota, which has not done that, has had so many problems.
Wait, stop right there. Did you hear the framing? Anya asks about 2 dead Americans, and Ewing's first instinct is to blame the local authorities for not cooperating. Think about that logic. She's saying that because the state didn't help with the raids, it's unfortunate that people got shot. That's not a policy defense, that's a threat. She's essentially saying, if you don't do what the federal government wants, we can't guarantee your citizens won't be killed. This is the David versus Goliath dynamic in full effect. But it gets worse. Watch what she admits about the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bavino is said to have been relieved of his role in Minnesota, and Kristi Noem has been sidelined too by the looks of it. This is a major concession from President Trump, isn't it?
If we're trying to put points on the board, you can say it's a concession for Trump, or you could say, it's a concession that Tim Walz finally is allowing, ICE to do their job. However, what I would say is I do not think DHS Secretary Noem's comments immediately after the killing of Alex Pretti were very helpful. She spoke too soon, and to call somebody a domestic terrorist, we didn't know that at the time. We still don't know that. If that comes out to be the case, fine. She spoke too soon. With regards to Greg Bavino, I think this was somewhat strategic. I think they're sending him back to California, which is where he's from. Perhaps there's just too much bad blood between the people of Minneapolis and Mr. Bavino. You'll see that Tom Homan, who is the head of ICE, is stepping in. Hopefully this will be a fresh start. And again, we can do what the people voted for, which is to get illegal criminals, killers, murderers, pedophiles, out of Minneapolis.
Did you catch that? She just admitted that the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, lied. She said Noem spoke too soon by calling a dead mother a domestic terrorist. This is a massive receipt trap. They labeled a victim a terrorist to justify the shooting, and now that the footage proves she wasn't, they're calling it unhelpful comments. But notice the pivot at the end. She immediately starts listing killers and pedophiles to distract you from the fact that the person they actually killed was an ICU nurse. This is classic outlier analysis. She can't defend the actual death, so she talks about a hypothetical monster.
President Trump's supposed motivation for this is to make Americans safer. Would you say America is safer today than it was a few weeks ago?
Well, it's not what I would say, it's what's true. We have the lowest level of killings in America since the 1900s. So, the fact that President Trump and his team have deported 600,000 illegal aliens, in addition, which is even better is 1.8 million people who are here illegally self-deported. And when you self-deport, you have an opportunity to come back into the country legally. So again, not what I say, it absolutely is a safer place.
Do you think the people in Minnesota feel safer?
Well, there's been a lot of very high emotions, in Minnesota, and a lot of this has been done by agitators, quite frankly, who are paid to stir up the situation. So I'm sure the locals do not feel safe from having people who have political agendas or don't like the president of the United States.
I think they probably feel unsafe because 2 protesters have been shot on the streets.
This is the most insulting part of the spin. Anya asks if people feel safe. Ewing claims America is at its safest, which I'm sure is a great comfort to the families of the people ICE just shot. And then she blames the fear in Minnesota on paid agitators. This is how they dehumanize a movement. If you're protesting because your neighbor, a nurse, was shot in the street, you aren't a grieving citizen to them. You're a paid agitator. She's trying to erase the emotional authenticity of the protesters by claiming they're on a payroll. Now, prepare yourself for the most hypocritical Second Amendment argument you've ever heard.
Well, I mean, if anybody is looking into these stories, they will see that both of these deaths could have been prevented. It is not like ICE is just randomly going around shooting people. Remember that Alex Pretti, though he didn't deserve to die for it, and he has the right to Second Amendment, he did not tell the agents when they were restraining him that he had a firearm, and it escalated from there.
It's quite something that this event has managed to unite both the NRA, the National Rifle Association, and people on the left. Isn't it a fact that on this gun point that what the administration is saying is wrong? He had, the right to have the gun, as you say, and perhaps in that moment that wasn't the first thing on his mind.
Well, of course you have the right to have a gun, but anybody who owns a gun, there's different state laws. You need to register your gun. You need to carry ID and your permit, which my understanding is he was not carrying either one. But that aside, it's also just common sense. If you're being restrained by the police, you should disclose, well, you need to disclose legally that you are holding a weapon. It's the same thing, with any other situation. These people are law enforcement officers, and you might not like the policy, but Americans overwhelmingly voted for this policy, and now it's been enacted. So if you're going to a peaceful protest, just use better judgment in, not having things escalate into this tragic situation.
It sounds like you're blaming him for his own death again.
This is the smoking gun of the interview. She admits Alex Pretti had a Second Amendment right to carry, but she then says he should have used better judgment and disclosed the weapon while being restrained. Follow the logic. If you have a right that gets you killed the moment you try to exercise it, you don't have a right. You have a permission slip from the government. This is the ultimate law and order hypocrisy. The "don't tread on me" crowd is literally arguing that a federal agent is justified in shooting you for having a holstered weapon because you didn't announce it while they were tackle moving you. Anya is right. This is victim blaming, plain and simple.
I would never blame him for his own death again, but I do believe the death could have been prevented.
A recent poll suggests that over 60% of people think ICE are going too far. What does this mean for President Trump's immigration plans?
Yeah, I've seen that poll too, and it's quite frankly, it's not a surprise to me. If you watch just the average channel media, they make it seem just, kind of like was alluded to earlier, that random people are being shot on the streets of Minneapolis when that's simply not true. So of course people don't like the way this is playing out, and that's why, they're going to change the way this is happening. And again, I say that this is the places where this is happening are where the two state and federal sides are not working together. And you also have to keep in mind, CNN, who's hardly, a big cheerleader for Trump, basically took together polls, New York Times, Marquette, I think it was ABC and NBC, between 55% and 67% of Americans agree with the statement that illegal immigrants should be deported. So, again, he's got a mandate to do this.
Jennifer Ewing, thank you very much for joining us.
So here is the autopsy. The administration is firing commanders and swapping personnel because the PR is a disaster, but the rhetoric is exactly the same. They are still blaming the dead for the bullets the government fired. Over 60% of Americans think this has gone too far. Is this the moment the law and order brand finally breaks? What do you think? Was Alex Pretti responsible for his own death because he didn't disclose a legal weapon? Or is that just a convenient lie to cover up a bad shooting? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit those like and subscribe buttons. They really help us out. Thanks for watching.